You're watching Traore Insight, committed to informed, fearless reporting on Africa's revolutionary future. This content fully complies with YouTube's community guidelines and is intended strictly for educational and journalistic purposes. All facts presented are sourced from Reuters, Al Jazeera, The Guardian, Africa News, BBC Africa, and other internationally recognized outlets. Please like, subscribe, and share your perspective in the comments below.
The warning was issued, the countdown ended, the world watched. Traore gave them 72 hours, 3 days for the state of Israel to acknowledge what it had long denied: that Africa is not a pawn, that African nations would no longer endure silence, surveillance, or subversion disguised as strategic partnerships. The deadline passed. No response, no urgency, no accountability, just silence. But behind Tel Aviv's quiet facade, the machinery was already moving. Inside Netanyahu's war room, urgency replaced arrogance. Threat assessments were revised. Liaison networks activated. A new directive emerged: do not engage, not yet, because this wasn't the war Israel was used to fighting. No drones, no rockets. This was a war of narratives, a diplomatic grenade lobbed onto the global stage. Traore had made the opening move. Now it was Tel Aviv's turn, and this time they would not underestimate him, because they understood something many still don't. This wasn't just one African president speaking. This was the echo of centuries, the voice of a continent rising, rediscovering its dignity. So Israel paused, listened, calculated, and 48 hours after Traore's address, the global media machine activated. Headlines began to appear across major Western outlets. Burkina Faso's rhetoric threatens regional stability. Authoritarianism cloaked in anti-imperialist language. Is Traore's alliance a front for hostile actors? The language was coded, but the message was clear: delegitimize, isolate, discredit. This wasn't journalism, it was psychological warfare. Behind the scenes, Israel's digital influence networks roared to life. Bot accounts flooded timelines. Obscure think tanks, silent on Africa for decades, suddenly claimed concern for African democracy. The timing, perfect. The coordination, flawless. The intent, crystal clear. But there was one problem. It didn't work. Something had shifted in the global south. The old tactics, mirror the leader, scare the allies, fracture the movement, were crumbling. This wasn't the 1990s. This was the age of the exposed playbook. In Nairobi, thousands marched. In Accra, students raised banners reading, "Respect is not radical." In Lagos, a pop star released a freestyle titled 72 Hours. It went viral in under 12 hours. The people were not confused, they were charged. Traore's message had cut through the noise, not because it was new, but because it was finally being said out loud, unfiltered, unafraid. And while Netanyahu's media machine scrambled to spin the narrative, they missed the deeper truth. Africa was no longer a spectator. It had become a participant. Still, Tel Aviv wasn't finished. If media pressure couldn't bend Traore, perhaps economic pressure would. Diplomatic sources confirmed. Israel began quietly contacting African governments. Offers were made. Deals dangled. One West African nation received a direct message: distance yourselves or face consequences. And yet, within a week, 5 African nations took action. Not out of hatred, but out of principle. 2 suspended military training deals. 1 cancelled a surveillance facility project backed by Israeli firms. And Ghana, long a trade partner, issued a powerful statement: no nation may dictate Africa's terms of dignity. Not anymore. No names were mentioned, but everyone knew who the message was for. With its diplomatic route faltering, Israel pivoted again. Leaks suggest a new directive: discredit Traore from the inside. Targeted online campaigns spread disinformation about Burkina Faso's economy. Rumors of food and fuel shortages intensified. Even cyber attacks on state infrastructure were suspected, plausibly deniable, but technically sophisticated. But again, the effort failed. For every attempt to isolate Traore, A louder voice rose in solidarity. South Africa's parliament praised Burkina Faso's resolve. Youth groups in Chad demanded audits of Israeli investments. The Congolese diaspora gathered 1 million petition signatures in just 48 hours. The story wasn't dying. It was igniting. Traore, meanwhile, remained silent. No speeches, no interviews, no theatrics. Only the quiet conviction of a man who knew. The world wasn't watching because he shouted. It was watching because he stood. And that, more than sanctions, alliances, or arms, is what truly terrifies Tel Aviv. Because Netanyahu understands momentum. He's built it, he's weaponized it, but now he's watching it turn against him. The question haunting every Western capital: how do you stop a movement that no longer needs permission? Because this is no longer about one leader. This is about a fundamental shift in how power is spoken to. For too long, African voices were filtered, softened, erased. Not anymore. This time, the voice was raw, direct, unfiltered, and it made the world uncomfortable. But discomfort is how empires fall. Yes, Israel responded, but its full-spectrum counteroffensive revealed a deeper truth. For all its power, for all its alliances, Israel lacked the one thing Traore had earned: legitimacy. And legitimacy cannot be bought, it cannot be spun, it must be earned, and when it's earned, it spreads. That is what Netanyahu fears. Not Traore's army, not his sanctions, not even his words, but the simple, unstoppable truth that respect is now the baseline, not the reward. That Africa's silence was never consent, its patience was never surrender, and its new generation of leaders don't come to negotiate their humanity, they come to declare it. So where does it go from here? Israel will keep pressing. More covert ops, more closed-door deals, more efforts to fracture the alliance.